Good day and welcome to another episode of The Basics of Finding Fault. In this episode, I'm going to be going over alien octopus and the theory therein, as well as H.P. Lovecraft. This episode is brought to you by True Monsters, by myself, Judas Ex Machina, available for $6.99 in paperback and 99 cents on Amazon Kindle. Now, recently, Google brought attention an article titled "Scientists Declare Octopi Life from Another World." It was by Jason Weisberger, and it was citing sources from the Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology, published by Elsevier. The original study cited is in Cause of the Cambrian Explosion, Terrestrial or Cosmic. And I'll have links to all of these at the bottom of the podcast. The gist of it is that panspermia planted octopus eggs on Earth 250 million years ago, so I just had to go digging. First, just like a Wikipedia page, I check the sources. I start off with the publisher of Progress in Biophysics. The company's name is Elsevier. Now, I won't go into the founding of the company and their claims that they were the first to publish German exiled Jewish scientists, because I don't feel that's pertinent and it could be misleading. Publishing something without peer review just because they are exiled seems disingenuous to me, even though my own bias thinks that those scientists were probably on the level. Primarily, their YouTube video about their company lacks a certain integrity. They're an excellent publishing company that claims it takes bold risks that change the world, and however rightly they were for publishing aforementioned scientists, they did not publish peer-reviewed works. They claim they were developing electronic dispersal of their product before the World Wide Web was invented, but anyone knows that, well, anyone can publish anything online. Even me, and I know what I'm talking about because I can offer resources that show I'm right. Elsevier is one of those subscription sites, but they also publish material for you in their journals for a fee, and they don't seem to bother with a peer review as long as the fee is paid. I'm not saying they're fake news, but their business model seems successful and suspect, especially since they were the target of Who's Afraid of Peer Review, an article written by science correspondent John Bohannon that describes his investigation of peer review among fee-charging open-access journals. He submitted fake scientific papers with grave and obvious scientific flaws to 304 journals that should have rejected the papers. Elsevier was one of the ones that accepted the paper. But I digress. We want to learn of octopi. Octopuses is also an acceptable plural, and their alien oranges. The Cambrian Report, as I'm calling it, does cite its authors, of whom I'm attempting to contact, one of which is Edward J. Steele, who is listed as attending the Center for Astrobiology University in Rahuna, Sri Lanka. I have a copy of the letter. I'll post it on my website and in the links here. And he did reply, and I'll include those in the links as well. I thought it was really cool. A scientist that worked on a paper responded to my random email. It was great. Anyways, so most of the scientists, and it seems to be about 30 of them in all, mostly attended the Buckingham Center for Astrobiology in the University of Buckingham in the UK. So these scientists, and I will call them that, even though I've really only seen the credentials of Steele and a few others, they claim, and I quote from their works, "The genome of the octopus shows a staggering level of complexity with 33,000 protein-coding genes, more than is present in Homo sapiens. Its large brain and sophisticated nervous system, camera-like eyes, flexible bodies, instantaneous camouflage via the ability to switch color and shape are just a few of the striking features that appear suddenly on the evolutionary scene. The transformative genes leading from the consensus ancestral nautilus to the common cuttlefish to squid to the common are not easily to be found in any pre-existing life form. It is plausible then to suggest they seem to be borrowed from a far distant future in terms of terrestrial evolution, or more realistically, from the cosmos at large. One plausible explanation, in our view, is that the new genes are likely new extraterrestrial imports to Earth, most plausibly as an already coherent group of functioning genes within, say, cryopreserved and matrix-protected fertilized octopus eggs. Thus, the possibility that cryopreserved squid and or octopus eggs arrived in icy bottlades several 100 million years ago should not be discounted, as that would be parsimonious cosmic explanation for the octopus' sudden emergence on Earth circa 270 million years ago." All right. Now, I won't go into too much into that, but the Cambrian report itself also has a few quotes in the beginning, notably by N. Chandra Wickramasinge and Fred Doyle from their book Life Cloud. Chandra is also one of the scientists listed in this report, so now I'm doubly interested if they've used similar techniques I've used for references. If you click my references, you'll understand what I'm saying. It isn't unheard of for a scientist to base future works on already published works, but I had to have a look at Life Cloud's authors. So Sir Fred Doyle is known for coining the term Big Bang, but also for discrediting the theory because he felt it resembled arguments for a creator. Doyle pushed more of a steady state, where the expanding universe with its separating galaxies get filled in by random creation of galaxies that fill the space that's left in between. He also wrote science fiction, which is where I recognized his name. He wrote a TV series and a book series called A for Andromeda, and a lot of his science fiction work deals with the concept of panspermia. So Chandra and Doyle worked together for over 40 years, developing and pushing forward the idea that life didn't begin on Earth, but from space and other planets, which to me just seems like so much turtle stacking. Fine, life on Earth came from space, but where did that life come from? In any case, these are very educated men with PhDs and are much more clever than I am. However, the most fun criticism of the report came in the report itself. And the excerpt reads, "We certainly do not want this paper to read, as one reviewer has put it, somewhat like a last-ditch and exasperated attempt to convince the mainstream of the scientific community that in following neo-Darwinism, they have gone seriously astray, because life has been carried to this planet from elsewhere in the universe on comets, meteors, and does not result from abiogenesis on Earth." I personally thought that was pretty funny that they would include a critique of their own report in the report. So then they offer a trigger warning or two, and it's off to the races. Yes, a trigger warning. I won't bog this down with the science, but there is a reference to life on Mars, ancient viruses as the most information-rich natural systems in the known universe, I suppose hinting at life being created by alien gods and their programmed genetic material. That has its own theorists, and the rabbit hole is deep. Essentially, this is all things I've read about or heard about in science fiction in other inspired titles such as Calculating God by Robert J. Sawyer, by the likes of David Icke and his Children of the Matrix, from Francis Cricket, and even more recently in films such as Prometheus, and even by Sir Fred Hoyle in his own works. So I don't know where he's starting to pull the fact from fiction. It is true, scientists have declared this, but not all scientists have declared this. Not all scientists have declared that octopus are from outer space. So many scientists even dispute panspermia and the assumptive reasoning that it follows, such as life exists, therefore it must have arisen naturally, therefore it is not highly improbable, therefore it must be happening elsewhere, therefore life must exist elsewhere in the universe, therefore panspermia. The report references its authors as its sources, references their own previous works, and a few scant references from other scientists' works with viruses. Richard Dawkins and his work on HIV viruses, etc. So while I can't entirely call this fake news, it does fall heavily into fault. It should be presented as really cool ideas some scientists have about life and a bit about octopuses, instead of scientists declare octopi life from another world. But maybe that's just me. So what does this have to do with a pulp writer from the 1920s and 30s? Well, and I'm going to include a few pictures of Lovecraft here, because I had a chance to go visit Lovecraft's grave. He is one of my favorite authors. He is really the father of modern American horror, as well as really groundbreaking in terms of using environment to be creepy and haunting, which really wasn't done before. You had your gothic horrors, etc. He's a really brilliant writer, a little bit dry and drawn out, really racist by today's standards, didn't like the Jews, married a Jew. Anyways, so what does this have to do with octopus and panspermia? Well, I'm really sorry, Hoyle and Chandra, Lovecraft thought of it first. And if anyone is actually listening to this, the educated among you might say, Anaxagoras came up with it first, you plebe, and I will fight you about that. Well, Anaxagoras, who was like in 2000 BC, I think it is. I'm getting the dates wrong. I'll double check it and I'll put it in my links. He mentioned seeding twice in his works on where life came from. That's it. And it wasn't even in reference to space sperm. There were some chemists that kind of came up with an idea of it in terms of cosmic protein kind of strands forming, but not really in the element of like fully formed life landing on Earth and then evolving from there, which is really what panspermia kind of pushes. So Lovecraft's star-headed beings and even Cthulhu himself are based on the aquatic beings that Lovecraft loathed. Still, Lovecraft was not a scientist, and he immersed himself in as much information as he could on scientific studies. Anyways, the very thoughts of ancient species migrating through space may very well have come from the concepts of vernal pools, also called vernal ponds or ephemeral pools. They're temporary pools of water that provide habitat for distinctive plants and animals. Mosquitoes and the like, as well as certain amphibians, utilize these pools that can be dry for years. Lovecraft, with his great race and Yog-Sothoth yeast infections, migrated through the universe in this very method. They moved from planet to planet or pod to pod. Since, space travel would be exceedingly difficult, they just migrated endlessly. So what happens when a civilization rains down on a planet? It's a lot like what happens when a vernal pool fills. The little guys, elder things, and their Shoggoth bionanotech show up first and most frequently. If the planet's biosphere isn't suitable, that may be all that shows up, and they leave after they sucked up all the available resources to move on to the next suitable planet. So if the conditions are favorable, the elder things are followed, then the Migo, the Great Race, and so forth, each preying on the things that came before it. So this is much like what happens when a vernal pool dries to mud. The flowers bloom in the mud, and everything sets up to wait through another dry summer. So alien octopi are not really a new idea. I mean, Cthulhu himself is basically an octopus head. And every once in a while, a new theory pops up that tickles the mind, but really, it has yet to be seriously proven. And I think the only real proof we'll have that panspermia is a factual effect and not just an interesting science fiction side note or something, an interesting little bauble. It's as if we actually come in contact with an alien race and find similarities in our genetic structures, then we'll have more of a grounding that life came from somewhere else in the universe and landed on it, panspermia being real. Until then, for me, it's really just speculation. Thank you very much for listening. That's pretty much the end of it. Give me your thoughts. Record yourself calling me on my crap. Send it in. I'll work it into a podcast. You can make fun of me if you want. I'll address it. My throat's been a little bit raspy, had some craziness going on in my life that I had to yell and scream about, kind of ripped up my vocal cords. So if I sound a little bit different, that's the reason why. You're not going to catch a cold from hearing my voice. Thank you once again, Cogs. Be sure to check out my Patreon. I'll have the links in the description. I'll have as much of the information backing all these things up, as well as the links to the original article as I can. Be sure again to check out my books. True Monsters by myself, Judas Ex Machina, Strange Attractors by myself, as well as The Judas Bastard, a vampire novel. Thank you. Have a good day. I know I've said thank you like 10 times, but thank you.